Thank you. Thank you for making it to this place. I hope you can all hear me very well. Okay, so officially, I want to welcome you to the Leadership Agenda Summit 2022. And we've gathered here because we've chosen to take responsibility for the problems in the world rather than complain about them or make excuses, which is the manner of many people. Societies only move forward when people take responsibility for the problems in their time. That has been the only path forward, the only path towards progress for generations, and it will always remain that way. So we are here because we've chosen faith over fear, we've chosen responsibilities over excuses and complaints, we've chosen to be a part of the effort to move the world forward. That's why we are here. And as you know, the world in all its trouble has always moved forward, and we're living at such interesting times today, a time of unprecedented, rapid changes, which seem not to be slowing down, and which will not slow down. And which will not slow down. But our ability to embrace the situation we find ourselves in and maximizes is the only way forward. It's the only way we can move the world forward. Because as I said, moving the world forward is our responsibility. Whether you do that as a businessman or as a leader of a civil society group, when the agenda is to move the world forward, then that's the right attitude. So my hope is to, over the next few minutes, share some thoughts about the changes, the trends that are shaping our world today. You'll recall in July 2013, a resident of California, Alicia Gerza, outraged and saddened after the acquittal of George Zimmerman, who was accused of killing a black teenager in 2012. Saddened and outraged by the acquittal of this man, she made a post on Facebook containing the words, "Black Lives Matter." Those words she posted soon became a rallying cry and a movement throughout the United States and around the world. What started as a simple post on Facebook turned into a movement. An estimated 15 million to 6 million marched during the protest in the United States alone supporting the Black Lives Matter movement. But it was just a simple post on Facebook. That's something that would have been unthinkable 2 decades ago. That's how much the hashtag on Twitter moved the whole world to action. If they never experienced that, they would have thought it wasn't possible. But that's the world we found ourselves in today. And the impact was that serious for a businessman, for a community, civil society, and for the government of a nation. In March 2022, a UK environmental law charity, Planet Earth, announced it intends to bring a claim against Shell risk by the company agreement. And this is just as the United States Security and Exchange Commission sued Val S. World Iron Ore Miners for about safety. These are the realities of the world we now live in today. A world of heightened awareness and rights consciousness. Donald Trump once stated that success is knowing how the world works. whether success as a person, as an organization, as a nation. It has to be because you clearly understand how the world works. And by that, the implication is not how the cosmos works, dealing with the systems of individuals, nations, organizations always lead the game. Those who don't will be overwhelmed. Because as you know that we are living in the midst of crisis is well understood. We live in the midst of chaos, from pandemic to wars, and all manner of situations. The structures of business are thrown out of order. And sometimes leaders are confused. But it is the responsibility of leaders to move the world in the right direction. So leaders must be clear about the changes that are taking place and have a firm handle on the forces behind those changes. Because change doesn't happen on their own. They happen as a result of the actions and activities of human beings on it. And no nation, no organization ever achieves significance by watching things happen. It has always been about those who took responsibility, who took actions, who saw beyond the heavens that causes things to move in the direction it moves. When in 2016 the World Economic Forum predicted that the United States by 2030 will no longer be the world's superpower, it didn't quite look like something that could happen. It seemed very disputable. But as China's net worth now reached around $20 trillion in 2020, to overtake the US $89 trillion, it is clear that there is now a shift in the global economic power. What are the implications of this? What is the implication of China becoming a world power? The question is not whether it will happen, the question is how soon that would be. As Joseph the Master said, every country has the government it deserves. But I say that every generation gets the world it deserves. Yet, it must take people, every generation, to build the world everyone deserves. Global megatrends are macroeconomic and geostrategic forces that are shaping the world today in profound ways. The implications of these are varied and broad. But we must not forget that all of us shoulder the responsibility of moving the world forward. And that we do by taking on ventures, whether profit and non-for-profit. The reason you are a leader, whether you are in the public sector or you are in the private sector, whether your business is in Dubai or Nigeria or India or England, is because you want to commit to something larger than you. You want to care about the lives of people. But what businesses used to care about has changed. I just mentioned the fact that the United States Security and Exchange Commission took a company to court for not properly reporting their commitment to the climate. Human beings and civil society groups are taking organizations to court for not taking climate change seriously. And if it is true that what starts as a simple tweet, can move people through the streets of Cairo and Lagos and Dubai and London and New York, what is the implication to you as a leader? How would that change your approach to leadership? For several years, the United States dollar has been the world's currency. But that is shifting now. How does that affect international trade? A war breaks out in Russia, and supply chains are disrupted around the world. The price of energy shoots up. And recession is certain. But remember that these trends that are shaping the world are the consequences of decisions made by people. Made by human beings that sat down at one corner of the world. And I said earlier that the world in all its history continues to move forward. But it moves forward only as a result of the actions and decisions and choices made by people who take responsibility for change. Those are the ones we call leaders. And they take this responsibility either as profits or non-profit or by leading in the public sector. And trouble persists and trouble remains. And organizations have trouble and nations are troubled as long as the leaders of those nations and organizations and communities are unable to manage the complexities of their time. What worked yesterday doesn't work again. The world we lived in the year 2000 and 2010 and 2015 has changed. And it brings with it implications that are serious. The question is, what will you do today? What opportunity does that give you? How does it threaten whatever you do? If you don't keep track of the change that is shaping the world, those changes could destroy a nation, could destroy an organization. A beautiful idea will be drained. But when you understand the complexities, then we can not only take advantage of those trends, but we can shape those trends in a direction that gives us an advantage. That was what made Apple a great organization. When Steve Jobs returned to the company, that was out. Everybody knew that Apple couldn't survive. But he was able to leverage the complexities of the day and build an organization that the world is proud of today. Around the 1970s, the Chinese economy wasn't something very wonderful. But decisions and actions have made a difference today. But I said, to make the right decisions, you need to understand the trends that are shaping the world today. Because the trends that shaped the world yesterday no longer apply. The rules of the game has changed. And that brings every one of us an opportunity. Because you see, the greatest fortunes are made when the cannonballs fall at the harbor. In other words, in times of difficulties, in times of chaos, that you find the most advantages. So as we gather here today, we must understand that the burden of lifting a generation out of poverty, out of deprivation, lies on our shoulders, whoever we are. Our job is to leverage whatever we do, whatever business it is, whatever thing you lead, whatever idea you lead. Whether your approach in leading that idea is profit or is non-profit, or whether you are using the instruments of faith to move that idea, we must understand that the burden of leading a generation lies on our shoulders. So we cannot afford to make decisions that are unwise. People are not looking for banking, for where to put their money. They're looking for services that can strengthen them and move them forward. Neither are people looking for HR services. Or they want a government that cares for them, that can lift them up. This must be the contemplations you make as a leader. Shifts. So today we find the shifts in global economic power, demographic change, rapid urbanization, rise in technology, and climate change as the leading trends that are commonly identified and shaping our world. These forces have disrupted the world, leaving us with tools, resources, ideas, and frameworks. The question is whether we can pick up these frameworks, these tools, these ideas, these resources to build a world that works for everybody, to build a world that lifts millions out of poverty, or whether we're going to be narrow-minded and focus on living the world the way it is and wishing that a world that is gone remains the way it is. Organizations and nations that made that mistake in the past have signing off for bankruptcy as their result. As I end this keynote, and which will be followed by a panel that will unpick the themes I have raised and dig deeper, I hope that we can all take our responsibility as leaders very seriously. And I hope that this summit today leaves you a better person, widens your perspective, deepens your insights, so that you can live with the world, for the world, a better organization, a better nation, a better community, where everybody is important, a world that works for everybody. I believe with all my heart that we can make this a reality. So as I end right here, right now, I hope that we can think seriously about the ideas I have raised and make decisions based on those ideas. For only then can we build a world that works for everybody. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Brian Reuben. So we quickly get into the next activity. I now invite, we're going to go into the panel discussion. And this is just taking into context and elaborating further some of the key points that Dr. Reuben has mentioned. The purpose of the roundtable is to identify the major trends and global shifts reshaping the world we live in. We are going to try to discuss the implication for governments, multilateral organizations, and civil societies, how these trends are impacting us now and the possible impacts for the future, and how we can shape them, how we can influence them, and how we should be responding to them. Of course, members of our panel are very experienced people, and I'll be inviting them up to the stage, and so we can start the conversations. If for any reason they're not available, we will still start. So I invite Dr. Austin Tam George. He's the Executive Director of Communication and Corporate Studies, Lagos, Nigeria. Is he available? No. Okay. I invite Tunde Falase. He's the CEO, Braincraft Limited, Lagos, Nigeria. Thank you very much. I also invite Ayuli Jemide. He's the lead partner, Detail Solicitors, and Chairman, MBA Section on Business Law. Give him a round of applause, please. Thank you. Let's also welcome Abiola Abediran, founder and managing consultant, Midread International. Thank you very much. Welcome. And finally, we also make welcome Aziz Amida, CEO, Pan African Towers, Lagos, Nigeria. Thank you very much. Hello. Again, I also take this opportunity to welcome people who are just joining us now. As you are aware, we are here today for the Leadership Agenda Summit 2022, organized by Africa Economic Summit Group. Right, so let's get cracking because the weather has taken some of our time already. And my name is Ulari Mwogazi. I'm just going to be moderating this event and coordinating it. Yes, I will. Thank you. Okay, so besides being the moderator, I have one lady panelist, right? So I think I'm going to go ladies first. So we've had, the purpose. Part of what Dr. Reuben has said is, as leaders, we need to, despite the chaos going on, despite the uncertainties that we currently find ourselves, leaders, whether in commercial or non-profit space, it's quite a very dynamic environment. It has always been, but I think recently it's becoming like, so ungrappling. But I guess people of the past may have said the same thing. So therefore, there are different trends that are coming up every single day that are, shifting behaviors, shifting decisions, shifting even our financial stability and all of that. So the goal we have today is to, based on our experience and the backgrounds that we all come from, if we can contribute to the discussion, what's the implication for governments, multilateral organizations, and civil societies? What impacts do these changes, do these trends have today and in the future? So I'd like to start with you, Abiola Abediro. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, our keynote speaker. I think that speech was super powerful, and he did highlighted, quite a number of very fundamental issues, especially as it relates to the way we see leadership, and of course, leadership that will power the future that we see. And of course, as the moderator alluded to the fact that there are trends, that are shaping our future, and this has implication for our lives, and of course, every part of our lives, and as well as leadership, the way leadership for the future would definitely be positioned to be able to achieve a better future for all. I think one of the global trends that I see that definitely has implication for us as business people, as leaders in whatever capacities that we operate from, is the globalization. And when I say globalization, it's this idea where the world is such a global village, and there is this exchange that is happening around the world, where something is happening in one country and you are feeling the impact in another country. Now let's take the case of the Ukraine war and all of that is going on. I'm sure that you can immediately see the ripple effect of two countries that are in conflict, and how that has ripple effect on the economies of other countries, right? And that is why, as leaders, we have to think beyond ourselves. We have to think beyond the things that are important to just us, just having that understanding that everything that we stand for and everything that we do in our capacity as leaders definitely has impact on other people, right? I mean, I imagine if the leaders of these two countries actually sit down to imagine the impact of their decisions, even though they may be looking at it from their own local environment in terms of the implication for their own countries. But the truth is that from what we see around the world, we see that the impact of our decisions far outweighs what we even imagine when we look at just our local environment alone. It does has implication for other countries that are very well related or very interconnected to us. And so the idea of globalization means that leadership has to be more should I say, more responsible, if I'm going to use that word, right, in a very loose way. We see that, we're very much connected and everything that we do has impact on other people. Another angle that I want to pick this out of also is the fact that, we are so connected right now that even our talents, are migrating from country to country. So there's this idea, especially among the Gen Zs right now, where they don't feel like they are confined by a geographical environment for them to do work or for them to find work. So you can be in one country and then you're working for an organization in another country, right? So the globalization idea, even in the minds of our youth, has gone beyond what we used to have, back in the day, right? And so you can see that cultures are sort of coming into each other just by mere fact of the migration that is happening among the young people. So we're interacting across the world with different people among different people, different cultures, different traditions, and so that's why it's just so important. I mean, we have people that are from different places here, not just Nigeria. So whether you are in India, Dubai, or wherever it is that you do business, you know that there are implications for how you lead your team, for instance. Now you have multicultural teams that we're leading in our organizations, and that has implication for what we do as leaders and how we put ourselves out there and we lead our people, we lead our teams. And I dare say that leadership of the future has to be purposeful leadership. I think I'll rest my case there.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Abiola. I think one fact that you mentioned is about, talent being quite globalized right now. I know for a fact that I'm having quite a difficult current situation. I'm trying to hire some Android engineers, and I've seen over 50 people, and the company says that they must come in physically for an online test and interview, and only 10 people out of 50 have agreed to come in physically for that interview. And just like you said, what's the need for them? I mean, I'm working in Nigeria and then I'm working in Dubai or anywhere doing the same thing I'm doing. So why should I stress myself and go down physically for an interview when I can do things remotely and probably earn in dollars, which earning for foreign currency right now. So thank you very much for your point. I also like to ask Tunde Falase for his comments. Thank you very much. Him.
No, that's all right. Thank you very much. And I stand on all the protocols. Brian, that was a very topical address you gave us. And I'd also like to acknowledge some of the comments from my co-panelist and maybe take it from there. My thoughts would be, we heard Brian talk about the trends, and my sense was that almost every trend is put forward by way of a challenge. And so there's so many challenges abound, but the secret behind challenges is that behind every challenge lies an opportunity. And we see organizations that have that as a business mantra. This is a strategic mantra. And so we find organizations that are winning despite the situation that we're in. So I'll just touch on two. Let me start from where we ended off, the war in Ukraine. A particular trend that we're facing right now is the disruption to the business model. And I want to actually drill all the way down. So let me start from Nigeria. So if you take a product line costing of your typical product and you say energy costs are 10% of your product line costing, diesel has gone from, is it 160 to 800? So all of a sudden, your margin on a product that was 20% in the first place has seen your energy costs go from 10% to 40%. What is happening with the consumer? Oh, we're going to pass it on to the consumer. No, you're not, because the consumer is on the other side of the recessionary coin. The share of wallet, the amount in the wallet is diminishing. So we find a peculiar situation where the consumer is being hard hit, and yet organizations are finding huge economic pressures in terms of being able to deliver viable propositions. So that's just my contribution, initial contribution from the standpoint of business. And you mentioned global, the Nigerian side. I'll also touch briefly on digital, if I may. Um, Digital, I think, is one of the most worrying trends. This is where you have the biggest opportunities. But I'd like to call out something that was masked by COVID. Before COVID came, the biggest challenge facing many dimensions of life was digital, in particular AI, artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is projected to take away 80% of human involvement. This is what we were already seeing before COVID started. Now it has been magnified because COVID also brought about a new normal where we tried for the first time this thing that HR organizations were afraid of trying, working from home. Is it possible? It was such a sacred fleece. And then we tried it, and now to your point, every Gen Z, every Gen Alpha wants to do remote working. Boris Johnson 4 weeks ago categorically stated that it is not productive. This is the stance the UK government is making. Elon Musk has told his workers to get back to work, while Airbnb is saying work from wherever you want. There's a conundrum right now. So there are 5 dimensions that rule the digital world. How your organization relates to these 5 dimensions is critical. There are many opportunities there, but there are also big challenges there. So I'll leave it there for now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Sunday. So let's hear from Abiola. Let's hear from Ayuli Jemide. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And I must say that it must have been a difficult one to talk about changes in the world as Reuben did in 5 or 10 minutes. Because, listening to everybody that has spoken on the panel, we seem to be talking about even more things than he was able to capture. There's something I say in my office, and once I started, people concluded. I said, there's only one thing permanent in life, and people just say it's change, right? So I think anybody who wants to survive on planet Earth, you just have to get used to that reality, that things will change. I was particularly intrigued by what Abiola said about globalization, that when something happens in one country, how it affects the entire world in one way or the other. And she alluded to the war between Russia and Ukraine and how it's affecting gas prices, how it's affecting the currency of the US and the Russia and Russia, and how the Russian currency is, Russia is at war and its currency is getting stronger. I don't know how they do it, but we need to go and learn from them as Nigerians. Maybe we should go to war to get our currency to be stronger. But that said, if we think about this from the leader's perspective, because you've asked this question, what should leaders be thinking? What should they be doing? How should they be approaching some of these issues? I think that one thing is clear from a lot of these things going on around the world, apart from the things that are pandemics and out of our control, majority of the things going on around the world clearly show that nowadays we have a citizen-driven narrative as opposed to a government-driven narrative. And when you think about things like Black Lives Matters, it's a citizen-driven narrative. One citizen says, no, this is wrong. And other people say, yeah, we think it's wrong. And if you look at the Black Lives Matter that was mentioned, before you know it, the narrative grew like a pandemic. You had footballers in different parts of the world, wearing armbands, and you would never have thought that that would happen. But I think If I were a leader of a country, that's one of the things that you have to realize very fast, that in the last 10 years, a lot of things that have been going on have been citizens-driven narrative. So it's no longer business as usual where you sit in your oval office or square office or rectangular office and you decide what you want to do. Leaders need to learn to listen more. And the reason why we're having these kinds of situations is because I think we've had many years of people not listening. So, all over the world, you are beginning to see that people are getting a bit violent in their views. And if you recall, a couple of years ago, we had something called the Arab Spring that just moved from country to country where citizens, in their own democratic manner, decided that leadership needed to change. And, this may be controversial, but even if you go down and trace why we have the constant growth of terrorism, it's also a citizens-driven narrative. And it may not be all the citizens, but it may just be a collection of citizens who feel, for some reason, they're not being heard, or their views are not being taken into cognizance in the way that that people are being ruled, right? So I think those are two key things from a leadership standpoint. That people should understand that nowadays it's a citizens-driven narrative, and most of it is driven by discontent. Before I pass on, I would just like to mention one phenomenon which is changing in the world, but we are not really noticing it. People are getting less and less emotional. There's a de-emotionalization going on in the world, and the studies and the research have shown that 11 million people every year are getting de-emotionalized, right? And technology and the pandemic and Zoom and Microsoft Teams and all this remote work is even making it worse, because when people sit in their rooms and they have to be there all day before a screen, particularly for the younger ones, how are they learning emotional intelligence? Emotional intelligence is not IQ. It's something that you learn from constantly engaging people, making your mistakes, getting into those odd situations where people look at you and say, wow, you didn't say that. Did you just say that? Did you just do that? And you go home and introspect and say, really, I shouldn't have done that. And then, the next time you do better. And that's how emotional intelligence grows. So we're having a younger generation who are getting less emotionally intelligent. And, if you tie this back to leadership, we would have a leadership problem if it continues. Because, leadership without emotional intelligence is destined to head south. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ayuli. Thank you very much for your contributions. So without much ado, Aziz, let's hear from you. Thank you for...
Thank you very much. All protocols being observed. When you passed the mic to me, I was like, oh, God, what if she calls Abiola? No, so, but I think from my point of view, I would just like to add to what has been said already. I think every generation that has passed always has, at one point or the other, would have this conversation. How the new generation is making things change, how the old generations didn't foresee something. So the world will always go in cycles, and it would, in most cases, head to a direction that goes, it could most likely up, but sometimes down. We've gone through a very concentrated 3 years, whereby the pandemic happened, we came out of that, inflation surge, war added to it, and it went on and on. And for me, I feel the world is slowly changing. The model is changing. At the same time, we're going from a recurring system to a more target-oriented focus. So what do I mean? Right now, before now, if you pay people salaries, they come, they do the job. You could pay someone super senior a high amount of money, and then the junior guy is producing more, but you basically just give the credit to the high guy. And I think we're going towards a situation where people start getting, leaders are beginning to understand that if I put a reward out there for what I want, and I'll pay the person that gives me that result. And that is becoming what is happening now. You see people say, okay, you know what, I'm in the UK, I could solve this problem for you. I had to do a project recently, and I had a lot of people, and there's this guy from Germany who says, okay, you know what, I could do this for you in lesser time, and it's going to be, I said, okay, yeah, let's try you. He did it, everything was done, and it was like, okay, yeah, we're giving you the reward. So people are going into a scenario where there's a task, and this is what we need to do. Who can do it for us, we'll pay him. It's no longer let's create a structure, let's create an amazing process that basically whether it performs or not, it doesn't matter. So we're going out of that mindset of, okay, yes, do we just tick the box with our process tools, or we're just going to basically focus on are we going to get a job done and move to that. And you mentioned something that is actually quite key, the de-emotionalization. And I think I wrote something down earlier. I said I had a meeting with someone every day for 90 days during the pandemic. When I saw the person, it was like I was seeing somebody completely new. And in my mind, it was like, okay, so this is what we've basically had to go through. We literally, you could have traveled, you could have been anywhere. But to me, you were just in front of a screen every day. It was like we were talking, we were closer, but then we saw ourselves, we realized we're being so far away for the past 90 days. So, and I think leaders have a role to play in that. And it's a system of creating perspective and clarity to people and helping redirecting teams to be able to say beyond all this whole thing, because at the end of the day we're still humans after all, and we need to do what humans do, which is socialize and interrelate and all that. So we need to, as leaders, we need to always drive that perspective and let people say, no matter how much we're focused on this chase for reward, everything, let's still find the path to say there's an organization, there's people, and they need to always come together. So yeah, I'll rest there.
Thank you very much, Aziz. I think you've actually drawn into the next questions that we wanted to talk about. So we've been able to identify some of those major trends that are happening and the global trends that are happening and how they're reshaping our world. But can we also speak more on how we can also, is it possible for us to control them? Are we able to shape these trends? And, should I, Dr. Reuben mentioned something about, you should be able to still control how things turn out. You don't just allow them to happen. You should still be, as a leader, be futuristic or in your mindset and see how you can shape how it turns out and not completely allow it to happen however it is we see it happening. So as leaders, is there anything with these trends that are happening that we can control? Can we shape them?
Okay, so let me take a stab at that. I think just looking at how the world is, there are certainly things that are within your control, and there are things that are actually also outside of your control. But as much as some things are outside of your control, you can also decide how you want those things to impact you or what you can do that can reduce whatever negative impact, either way that, it will have on you, or you can choose how you respond, right, to whatever it is that is coming. I feel like as leaders, one thing that I think is key for us is to definitely encourage that inclusivity, right? A lot of us, if not all of us that lead teams right now, I dare say that 90% of the people on your team are very young people, right? And there's this popular saying where you say something like, a boss has a title, a leader has the people, right? What makes you a leader is the fact that you are leading a people, right? And so whatever is going on outside of your environment, outside of your organization, and whatever is going on within your organization, the people that you're leading definitely have something to contribute. they definitely have something that you can tap into, that you can collectively then work on to decide, what is going to be your own internal culture that would determine how leadership plays out and what things you can influence from a leadership point of view. And then for all the things that are also from outside in that you feel like, okay, they may not exactly be within your control, you can choose your narrative. You can choose how you want to respond to it. But the underlying thing I'm saying is that, you have to, as a matter of, being a leader, essentially ensure that you bring that inclusion, within your team and harness the strength of everybody on your team. Gone are the days where the leader is perceived to be the one that knows all the answers, right? Or the final decision would rest with the leader in every case. In some cases, right, you may actually want to let your team take a lead on certain things, and that helps them to feel like they are part of something that is bigger than themselves. And how you're able to harness everybody's strength in that conversation can definitely change the narrative for you and help you achieve the result that you really want to achieve.
Thank you very much, Abiola, for your contributions. Any words from you, Tunde?
Yes, I'll just build on what Biola said. I would add maybe just two dimensions, a quick word on change, and then a quick word on emotional intelligence. Your question is, what do we need to do as leaders to ensure that we stay on top of change? And I think there's no more buffer. There's no more margin of error, unfortunately, is where the world is today because of the way challenge has caught up, has gone ahead of opportunity, so to speak. So if you're an organization, if you're an individual, if you're a team, if you are not forecasting change, if you're not making deliberate efforts to read the trends and understand how to get 2 or 3 steps ahead of change, there is not much market for being surprised by change. If you're surprised by change in today's world, you're typically on your way out. So what used to be the abstract science of forecasting has become a reality of your strategy teams, your finance teams, and most importantly, one of the biggest drivers of leadership. I'll also mention, Ayu touched on emotional intelligence. And I love the term he used, the demotionalization. This is real, and we need to understand that digital makes things more efficient, but it doesn't necessarily make things more effective. So we cannot tell what is going on in the lives of the people we are leading. If we're talking about recession, let's understand what is the impact on the families. Are we talking to someone who has shown up at work and his partner has just lost her job, or vice versa? How do you deal with these people when things are about to become even harder? So there's a quotient, we call EQ emotional quotient. There's a quotient that is taking new dimension with leaders, and that is adversity quotient. There's nothing remotely theoretical about it. These are the days where resilience is something that a leader must be able to demonstrate. Brian touched on it. Brian, you mentioned one of the things that we're trying to do is to be led by faith and not fear. So the fate of our organizations is that we're going to be ahead of change, we're going to be buoyant and prosperous, but we are dealing with adversity, and the leader has to be able to navigate that with teams that might be coming to work demotivated, feeling the stress of the headwinds that are blowing daily. How does the leader drive that culture of resilience? By leveraging. And so I would encourage those listening, adversity quotient it's a relatively new, it's one of the newest of the quotients, but it's a good thing to invest in that as a leader, because these are one of the real things you can do to stay on top of change with your team. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Tunde. Ayuli, do you have any words for us on how to shape, how we control this as leaders?
I'm learning a lot here. Adversity.
Yes, I am too.
Never heard that one. Thank you. I'll go and check it out. And I quite loved, I had to write it down. Digital make things efficient, but not effective. Thank you. There are certain things leaders can do in certain situations. There are certain things they cannot do. Right? I mean, the way I look at it is you can shape, you can't shape the effect, you can manage it, right? But you can shape a trend because you can identify that as a trend and then you can try to arrest it. But if you ignore a trend and the trend has, developed into a full-blown adult, you then have a situation where you are trying to engage a 30-year-old and you're trying to get them to unlearn things that they have learned in 30 years. It's a task, right? So I think, in this day and age, if I were to come up with things that will help leaders in developing their adversity quotient, I've learned a new word. One thing would be to try and identify trends early. If you identify a trend early, then it's easier to arrest it. A lot of the things that we see today, terrorism, all the things we've mentioned here, were trends. And, people just didn't see them, saw them, didn't think they were important, they ignored them, So that's what I would say. But then again, there are certain things that are, like Abiola said, totally out of your control. So one of those things will be some things that are results. I can give you an example. Things that are results of post-COVID, effects of COVID, right? We all sat down in our houses and COVID happened. I don't know that anybody could have stopped it from happening because we still don't even know what the theories are as to where it came from, whether the pharmaceutical companies developed something in China and spread it around the world so they could make more money, or it started, we still don't know, but, it came and there are, there are effects post-COVID. Just this morning, I got an alert from Amex, travel updates, saying that Heathrow Airport has shut down, and wouldn't allow, over 1,000 flights to come in. And I think, why is this? And the thing is, in the last 4 months, they have seen more travel than they have seen in the last 40 years. And I'm saying, what's going on here? And I started thinking to myself, okay, the world was shut down for almost 2 years. And everybody now wants to catch up to do the things that they couldn't do on Zoom. How many of you will pay £1 million for a property in the UK that you haven't seen? With, they'll take photographs and all that, No. Most people, you want to go and see it for yourself. You want to get a feel for the area. And I mean, Google Maps is doing very well, but Google Maps is not the same as going to that street and walking down and having a conversation with the guy in the coffee shop down the road and asking him, how long have you lived here? How's crime in this environment? And waking up in the morning to see people take their kids to school and watch their faces, whether they're smiling, whether they're happy with the environment. You can't do that on Zoom. You can't do that on Google Maps, right? So I came to the conclusion, and I was sitting right here when I saw that alert, and I came to the conclusion, I said, people are trying to play catch up. And as people try to play catch up, it's a backlog of 2 years, 3 years, 2.5 years, how many, the infrastructure, wasn't designed to take this amount of, the surge, right? I'm talking about surge, before I, let the microphone go. There's a surge now in Nigeria where people just woke up and say, you know what, I'm going to get my PVC. And INEC says, where have you all been? Right? So it's a similar thing, right? People are trying to play catch up. So a thing like that, there's nothing that the British government can do about it. They just have to manage it, right? So in conclusion, if we see trends, we should try to arrest them. But if it's something out of our control, then we have to find a way to manage it.
Thank you very much, Ayili. So, yes, we can manage those trends. So, Aziz, thank you.
Yes, thanks a lot. I think I would like to look at this from a different angle. I was in a strategy class a while back, and I asked the professor, I said, we're talking about research in motion, the BlackBerry produced, and I said, do you think you could have done a book on BlackBerry's failure before the failure? He said no. Same thing, I used to be a research analyst, and I was analyzing trends a lot. And one day we got into this argument that when you see a Fibonacci, there's a thing called Fibonacci. If you see a Fibonacci moving, can you really tell at any point if it's going to break the resistance or it's going to come back down? Because there's a lot of movement. There's 60 points in the candle that you can't predict where it's going to go. So I always have a belief that the only thing you could do as a leader is to understand that your first impression is to understand you're human first, before you're a professional, before you're anything. And in the midst of chaos, it is not the title that matters. It's the people who can keep the focus and say, this is where we need to go. And there is very little things we can focus on at any point in time. We could go into a table and say, these are the 10 things we want to focus on. And the one that matters, we've ignored. We don't know. And many companies, many groups go into strategy sessions trying to focus on a variable that basically will become outdated in the next few hours or days. And to give you an example, there's this model we used to have, because I work in an industry where diesel is a major factor. We've studied diesel for almost 10 years, and we could forecast diesel to almost an unmissable point as of 2019. 2020, the model was valid. 2021, even facilitated the listing. It was a major factor. Guess what? That model, we woke up, and it was 100% zero. Like literally, everything you've built for 10 years suddenly became, could we have known? No. And now, we're creating another factor to make the model efficient. And I was talking to one of the analysts, like, okay, you know what? Are we going to be sure when this this factor is going to drain down? I said, I don't know. So a lot of times we believe we're so in control that we could tell what's going to matter, but we don't. We can't. And there's a tech bubble now, but it's not the first time. There used to be the Yahoo days of, okay, boom, Google, Yahoo, all those guys, AOL, everybody was jumping. Suddenly it came down, and you realize that, oh, wow, all the money we've invested, what is left? Almost nothing. Now, I'm not saying the same is going to happen, but at the end of the day, there's going to be a reconciliation of everything. People, right now, we're trading products. We're saying, okay, I have this product, how much would you pay for it? Then we put a valuation on it. We're not yet making companies. Google started with a product, it made a company out of it. They didn't stay on the search. Yahoo started with a product, stayed with the product, and lost a lot. Now, and it's something that would happen eventually. And people, for me, I try not to understand trends and try to stick with people. Where are people running to say, if you guys, because it's a currency. If we all decide in this room we don't want to use the naira anymore, we want to use paper, it becomes a currency. And that's the way I like to look at things from my perspective, that the first point of call is to focus on the people we have, focus on what we have now. Let's do what is best by what we have now. What happens after that, in all honesty, as a constant forecasting person, I've learned my lessons that when I build a model, just call it base case and hope for the best on the rest. So, yeah, thank you very much.
So thank you very much. Thank you for your contributions. We're going to be having a Q&A session shortly for anybody in the participants that want to ask any of our panelists any question. But a question just came to my mind now to say, so who actually drives the trends? Is it the trends itself? Who follows? Trends or people? Or is it people that make trends or trends make people? What do you think? Yes.
Okay, sorry. We made a stock screen a while back, and stock screens are very technical. You do them and they just work. But in Nigeria, they've never worked back then. I don't know if they worked. I'm not in the university, in the trading system anymore. But what we did back then was to say, let's take this thing to the traders. After we've done all our technical analysis, and ask the traders what they will buy. The traders said, out of your 50 stocks, we'll only buy 10. We put those 10 in the screen and said, we're going to monitor this 10. That screen never lost. It literally never lost. It was 40% up when the market was around 8%. Now, what am I trying to say? People drive trends, no matter what you say. And at the end of the day, people will drive trends towards where they feel there's the greatest benefit. Right now, we feel the next leader in Nigeria is going to give us the best benefit to go. Where are we driving it to? The surge of PVC,
yes.
and all those sort of things. We feel, oh, the world is going to be digital. We're driving the trend towards tech. And the same thing would happen across the globe. If you feel, oh, the whole Black Lives Matter agenda was like, okay, you know what? If this thing continues, black people will be getting killed. Let's drive the trend towards creating awareness of why racism should reduce. And those sort of things would happen over time. So we need to, I always believe no matter what, people will drive everything, honestly. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Yes, you can.
I fully agree with everything Aziza said. So if we're going to build it as a theory, can I just add one bit to it? Your question was who drives trends, people or the trend itself? And I think as a former marketer, without a doubt it is people, but I would say that's 90% of the time. 10% of the time, it's life that drives trends. For the last 3 years, we've been reacting to a trend driven by COVID. Nobody expected that, and the disruption has been massive. Assisi also mentioned asking a professor, research in motion, how come they couldn't predict their demise, right? Because the world went smarter. So they started on smartphones, but they got overtaken by Apple and the like. So I think insurance specialists, the actuarial scientists, are the ones who have a good handle on this. You know, when they talk about act of God, the force majeure, it is something they try not to insure against for the reasons we speak about. So Aziz is totally correct. 90% of the time, you can work and understand where are people going. But act of God, when life creates a disruption, we need to know that that can be the one that comes on the left field. Yeah.
Thank you very much. You want to go? Yes?
Yes, if I can just add to that, I think the reality of what both of them have shared is the fact that in the present world and maybe in the world to come, the reality of the VUCA leadership it's now so obvious more than ever before. VUCA is volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity. And that is the world we live in today, where things are changing unpredictably, just like Aziz also mentioned, right? I mean, there are some variables you kind of feel like you had control of, you could tell where they were going. But in the last couple of years, events have shown us that things can actually change without you really being able to predict with a level of certainty that can allow you to say, okay, the line of action that we're taking right now will guarantee that we'll achieve the results that we want to achieve. So I think it's that resilience, that awareness, that agility, being able to move very quickly, are also things that as leaders we definitely have to imbibe and ensure that it becomes part of our lives.
Thank you. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you so much. So do we have any questions? Okay. 2 people. Thank you. Permit me to go again, ladies first. I'm just gender sensitive, sorry. Your name and your question. Thank you.
My name is Dima. Hello, everybody. We are heading into metaverse world, as you all know. And as you mentioned also that it's decreasing our emotional intelligence. So I would like to know and point on that, how are leaders reacting to this, and how can we stop this, or as leaders can stop this or encourage this? Which way are we, you will be taking? Thank you.
Thank you. Is the question clear? So we're headed into the metaverse stage, as we all know, and we spoke about, the emotionalization. So as leaders, how can we control this, and what are we doing to manage these trends of, metaverse? Thank you.
I think I can share a few thoughts about how leaders can try to arrest the trend of de-emotionalization. And they're just thoughts, they didn't come from any textbook. I think the first thing is that leaders themselves need to increase their EQ, because if someone, if the leader himself is de-emotionalized, he doesn't realize that people around him have lost it, him or her, right? So I think that EQ is something that we need to constantly talk about, and we need to start talking about it from the homes, mothers to children, fathers to children, in the schools. I think it's something that we need to start adding to our curriculum, not in a formal way. You're not going to have a class that says, this is emotional intelligence 101, right? But I think that the way people are handled from kindergarten to primary school is very important. When at the time when most of us grew up, there were no computers. You had to engage. You had to go to people's houses, and they were not home, and you dropped a note, and the note was standard. I came, I met your absence. And you can write a place and say, I will be here by so and so time. See if you can meet me. The gentleman there smiling, I know, he's from that school, right? So you couldn't send a text message to someone and say, are you at home? I'm coming, right? Everything was done face to face. So, some of us were, thought unlucky then, because we didn't have, these computers and this BlackBerry where we could message each other, as the millennials will say, message me, right? We had to engage, right? And that has helped us because, outlook to life is different if you've engaged all your life, right? And now you have a new generation of people who can disengage. They even disengage in your home. You're talking to someone, the person has a headphone, and you're saying, I'm talking to you, say, yeah, I can hear you. Yeah, what did you say? And intermittently the headphone is going back, So, I think this thing needs to start from home, and needs to start from schools, and that's looking into the future. But if we look at now, right? Honestly, I don't know, people who are in the tech world, I think people need to begin to design apps that test EQ, the way we test IQ, the way people go, in those days you go for a job interview, they're testing your IQ, right? People need to start testing their EQ and knowing where they stand and whether they need to shift. And this has nothing to do whether you're young or old or, I think it's really very important, because the way the world is going, we may get to a point where people stop saying hello to each other on the way. We'll see you in the lift and we'll say hello. We'll, car park. Those niceties of roadside conversations where you meet a total stranger and you say, "How are you?" Right? These days we're just, "Good morning, good morning." There's no follow-up conversation. "Oh, how are you? Where are you from?" You understand? Having a good day. "Oh, it's a lovely day today," or it's raining cats and dogs in Lagos. Nobody says those. Few people get into those kinds of conversations these days. So I mean, I don't have an answer. I'm just preferring all kinds of things off the top of my head. But it's a pandemic worse than COVID, which we haven't identified, and it has no vaccine.
Thank you, Ayuli. Okay, yes. Tunde, you can go ahead.
Thank you, Ayu. And I just want to add, because I heard her say emotional intelligence, and I heard her say metaverse, and I had a conversation with Brian this morning about the metaverse. So let me just say, there are dangerous times ahead, and we have to be really mindful. Digital has been extremely damaging to my boys. It has also been of great advantage. The metaverse is not new. The metaverse has existed for about 6-7 years. Go and ask your child about two games, Fortnite and Minecraft. Go and ask them how long they can play these games. My boys could play these games for 24 hours non-stop.
Sure.
When you check the way they talk, what they say, to your point, are you totally de-emotionalized? My boy was 12 when I figured this out just in time, and we had to create a new set of rules. If we're traveling, if we're in a car, you cannot be on a device. If we're on a table, you must make conversation. You cannot touch your device. Now, and that's why I really love the point you made about de-emotionalization. Facebook is now saying the world should go meta. We are going to have a massive de-emotionalization problem. When the metaverse went live, you can Google it. The most common thing that happened were that female avatars were being attacked. Imagine that, sexual harassment in digital. This was the first thing people were seeing. Why? As I'm sure a lot of us in the room know, your social media personality, let's start with, it's not a real personality. Second of all, most people, it tends to bring out the nasty side of you because there's no accountability. And now we're going to say organizations should take people who are already, these are people looking for leadership, and they're going to be put into a de-emotionalized world. The preserve of leadership is going to be tested if you really want to have a culture that drives for sustainable results. I just felt I should add that. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Tunde. Aziz.
Okay, I think you touched on the gaming part. So I'm an active gamer, and to give you I play Call of Duty a lot, and I could tell you that there is literally no gun you would show me that I can tell from the sound of the gun what is being shot. Technically, that's how much games I played. And now, what struck me more was the fact that when you play these games, you're shooting a human being. You're literally sitting down, shooting, and you just walk away. You're like, oh, that guy doesn't know how to play. But we talk about it every time, and every day you go into those conversations, you're like locked into a different world. It's like your friends, there's a huge social life in there. Your friends are there. I've known people for 15 years now that we play games together every night. 2 a.m., we're up playing, and it's something that would basically create a different way of thinking. And like you said, it's not new; it's just being consolidated, and to a larger scale. And what I've seen is that as much as it creates a a different way of relationship, it also has its good sides. And the good side is it allows you build bonds that are extremely strong with people who have common interests as you. And I'll give you an example. I most of my first 5 years of professional life was with people who were in the U.S. who spent time playing games like me, but we're all like-minded, and we basically build. We come up to them. Oh, I did this model yesterday. While we're gaming, we could talk about a lot of things, and we didn't have any bounds. It was more because you can't look at me tomorrow and say, "Oh, that's that guy that did X." No, it was just free. But but yeah, it has a lot of downsides. It also has a lot of good sides. So de-emotionalization is a major factor. And if you've seen anyone that knows me in my gaming mode, you know that I can be very, very detached. Once you're there, you're locked in, and it could be very addictive, but at the same time, very productive for you as a person. So,
Thank you. Thank you very much, Assis. So we have, what's your name, sir? Kumar, yes. He has a contribution to our question.
Hello, I'm Kumar. I run a hospital in Lekki. Yes, I thoroughly agree with all of you gentlemen. What I'm observing is that what we saw 2 or 3 years before, when you are going to any place, people greet you with compassion and love, and now you just see a strange face staring at you. Why are you here? I'm busy in my system here. They just put their head up and say, that's it. There is a lot of emotional damage happened in last 2 years, or maybe the new generation, Generation Z, is altogether in a different mood. As he was saying, just pull up the headphone and say, okay, I'm listening to you, and then they put it back. And then put it back, and then they continue doing the games or this thing. Even in the workplace, they are doing the same thing. When they find time, they get into WhatsApp or Instagram. Instagram is the one which is the worst. And see, as leaders, we all try to tell them that this is not what they have to be doing. And end of the day, they don't feel that we are telling them something good. They just stare at you and say, okay, what is that? Am I not working? Am I not contributing? That's it. So I think, as you all were saying, from the school we should start giving them, and they don't even do the sir or ma'am. They stop talking, Mr. Kumar. That's it. There was no. We all used to greet, yes sir. How are you? What can I do for you, sir? That sir is not there in the sentence. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kumar. I think I can attest to that. Yes, he has a question. I can attest to that. I know I always joke, there's someone in my team, she's Gen Z, and whenever she sees me, she goes, hey, Larry. I'm like, hey. Thank you very much. So he has a question.
Okay, thank you. I want to ask, there was a follow-up question about people and trends. My name is Victor Anilaju. I want to ask about people and trends, right? Okay, I hear 90 people drive the society, 90%. Trends is just like 10%. But I think it's the reverse, because these days we all pick up information that is trending, whether it's alien to us, whether we like it or not. In the political space, you see people supporting somebody that you know is coming to fraud us. But because the person is trendy, we just jump at it. So I think that trends, it's what motivates people, not like people are the one driving trends. So I don't know if we can explain that very well. Because this age and time, I could tell you, 90% of the information out there are not actually in the favor of the people. But we respond to those information because they are trending. I don't want to go personal, but let's take it for example. COVID, till date, people are still feeling it was false, it was true, it was whatever we call it. But government, organizations, people jumped at it. We created a protocol. We were not allowed to gather. We were not allowed to come together. At the end of the day, we are back here. We are all seated together. We are all flying in the same plane and all of that. I could tell you what happened during COVID was some few persons setting up an information and allow it to trend, and automatically other people start following that trend. So I want us to look into it again and balance it. I don't think it's 90-10. I think it's almost 50-50, or I think trend drive people more. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I think he has a question. If anybody on the panelists has a question or it's more of a contribution from him, do you have a counter idea or contribution?
We agree with him.
Okay, I agree with him. Right. Yes. Okay, so yes, she was like he was the next person. He has a question. Your name and your question. Very straight to the point of your question.
My name is Tayo Abobarin. I first want to contribute to the previous question, and that is about the metaverse and the emotionalization. And I think we need to start getting to a stage where product designers are creating analytics for interaction. I mean emotional analytics, such that instead of just seeing engagement, you can see how your interaction has a potential of influencing people, affecting people. So even if you're just in your house and you're interacting with people over the metaverse or the digital space, you can have a sense of whether you are, I don't know how it's going to work, whether you are being negative or you are making people happy or whatever. That's what I have to say to that. And then the question is about the trends. Yeah. On social media, we have, I think the most popular trends on social media will be the dance trends. And my question is, we have established that people influence trends and also events. How can we make the narrative favorable to a particular purpose? For example, the COVID. If the narrative of the COVID or the election is affecting my business, is there something I can do to affect that trend so that it favors me? Is there something that you can do instead of just following along? Thank you.
Do we get the question?
Yeah.
So instead of just following the trend, is there something we can do to influence the trend? Yeah. Does anybody have a response for him?
Thank you, Ayu. I think maybe if I can merge both questions, because the gentleman before you was asking, can we change the Assis principle from 90-10 to 50-50? And you are saying, can we, how do we stay on top of trends and drive trends? Okay, so I think earlier in the session, we mentioned the fact that wherever you have a challenge, you also have an opportunity. So I love the way you phrased it. Can we actually shape trends in our favor? You heard Aziz talk about Yahoo and Google. Can I ask a question? Who came first, Yahoo or Google? It was Yahoo. Yahoo came out as a search engine. Till today, they are a search engine, right? Google are one of a set of companies, to your point, sir, who deliberately try and create trends. So they're called the disruptors. Why is Apple, somebody mentioned Apple, Steve Jobs. If you go to Apple headquarters today, their company vision is written on the wall. It's quite long. It's called the Crazy Ones. Let me tell you the